Saw this guy with Pat McAfee. I think it was yesterday. Josh, good morning, buddy.
It's been a busy week. David, I didn't know that the second week of April was going to be a hot button week for college football. I figured we'd be talking about whatever Rory did at the Masters. Turns out he won it, and congrats to him. But, I mean, you could be in the middle of the season right now, and the Nico Iamaleava stuff would be one of the higher trafficked topics. Of course, this couldn't happen in the season, but you get my point. It's been a real like transcendent to college football hot button topic in the sporting world.
Well, Josh, I want this Nico situation to be a point that actually moves the needle instead of talk, right? So much talk. Look, this is not a shot at Nico himself, although he has to share some of the blame, but his representatives who I think have pushed him down the wrong path. But for all of college football, somebody stand up, be a leader, and make some changes. And I think the best thing that can happen is for Nico not to get paid and to go somewhere and just kind of fall out of favor. That's what I think needs to happen for college football so others don't follow the same path.
You're talking about collateral damage, basically. Mm-hmm. If bad things happen to one, but it's for the greater good of the whole, then that's classic collateral damage theory. I agree with you. I've thought that way for a while. I told you, I think the last two times we spoke, we've gone down this road in some form, and I'm going to go down it again. I have stopped caring about any individual in this entire deal. I've just adopted the mentality that every opinion I have is going to be aimed at the best interest of college football. And so, that's what's going to come out of my mouth. So in this sense, I agree with you. That's why I tried to be as forceful as I could Sunday night after all this stuff blew up. I didn't do an immediate reaction video. I didn't go on a bunch of shows on Friday and Saturday. I kept my mouth shut for 48 hours. And then I went on the Sunday night show that we do every Sunday night and just talked for 30 minutes about it. And I, by that time, had gotten some feedback from several different walks of the college football life. And a lot of people were of the opinion this could be a tipping point. This could really be something that moves the needle in a substantive way. And so I thought to myself, well, if it's teetering, let me try and kick it over the side. Let me play whatever small role I can play. And so I said what I said Sunday night, and then that kind of got echoed around the entire college football ecosystem and beyond Monday. And then now we're on Tuesday, and I feel like what you just said may be accurate. I feel like this may not be a situation where everyone's just a little upset about the state of college football, because we have those about 6 or 7 times per year. I don't think this is one of those times. I think this is one of those times where someone who otherwise would be totally checked out in April looks and says, what is that happening over there in college football? It's almost like you see smoke in the distance. Like it's enough to get your attention. What is that happening over there? Well, I don't know if you saw Dellinger's article. I think it was Saturday or Sunday. It kind of got lost in the noise of the Nico, Tennessee stuff. But he wrote an article. He's about as plugged in as anyone in Washington, D.C., overlapping with college sports. And he said lawmakers in a bipartisan nature feel like they're as close as they ever have been to getting some kind of limited antitrust exemption for college sports. Now, if anyone's listening right now and rolling their eyes, you should be. There's no reason we should ever be in a position where federal intervention is the only hope left for college football. But I can't hit the rewind button. David, you don't have one either. So given that we are where we are right now, I just found that interesting. And if that was already the case when he wrote that before the Nico stuff went down, I can't imagine the impact and maybe the fire that it lit under some seats once the Nico stuff went down to say, yeah, okay, if we're 75% of the way there, let's get some wind in the sails and let's get this thing finished.
You're at a point that I think somebody, maybe it's Greg Sankey, actually has to be a leader and has to call all the other commissioners, all the other presidents, and guys, we've got to all be on the same page, because I think the SEC, who was trying to do what's right for college football, is at a disadvantage when Nico can leave for another conference and make the Big Ten better, make Notre Dame potentially better, and nobody's kind of playing with those same rules.
Yeah, here's what I wonder, and I don't know this. I'm not wearing my legal hat because I don't have a legal hat, but it's one thing for a conference to have that rule. If every conference adopted that rule, you and I would love it, because it would basically apply a very, very punitive layer to transferring like we used to have not too long ago. It was like 5 minutes ago we had that. But then I wonder if some lawyer would look in and say, well, you are restricting trade, you're restricting movement, and take that to court and say, if one of you did it, it's okay, but if all of you do it, that gets batted down in about 2 nanoseconds. Point being, what we're talking about gets solved in is thorough a term as solved could mean these days. If you get what, Dellinger wrote about and what a lot of other people are talking about, because really, if anyone out there has a life and therefore they're not following this stuff, what they're really aiming for is they're aiming for limited antitrust exemption. And what that means is we've got some rules that we would like to have in college sports right now, college football included, but we can't make them because we don't have the legal power to enforce them. And we need Congress to wave its magic wand and tap us on the head and say, all right, we're going to give you some limited authority where you can make some rules and actually enforce them so that players aren't moving constantly. You can actually have transfer portal windows. You can actually absolve NIL being what it is right now, which is pay for play. And you can actually police that where if someone does it, you can get them in trouble instead of them just threatening to sue you. And, oh, by the way, your players don't have to be employees. That's really what they're looking at right now. We'll see if it happens.
Yeah, I'm just at a point, I look at spring game attendance being down, and that's not necessarily a barometer of people's interest.
I think it is. I think it is.
It certainly could be, right? Like, if you see these, the sand in the hourglass, and you're just losing a little pebble here and there as the time goes on, eventually, the comparison I've been using is, does college football become the NBA? Which, of course, there's diehards that still watch the NBA. It's not the NBA I grew up with.
Yeah, it's very important to note that there's always this zero-sum ignorant mentality. Anytime you try and raise a valid issue about this stuff, someone in the corner who wants to sound intellectually superior to the room is going to say, well, you'll still watch this fall, or, well, people are still watching. And I think you and I have discussed a couple of times the proper metaphor there. So it's twofold here. Firstly, I go back to the Mississippi River metaphor because I think it's been the most effective one I've used. If you live in New Orleans, I live in St. Louis, and I poison the Mississippi River in St. Louis on Monday, you're not perishing in New Orleans Monday night. It takes a little while for that to be downstream and the effects to be felt of it. It's the same thing with viewership habits, not just in football, but anything. You could have the most disastrous script imaginable on your favorite TV show. If you've been watching it for 13 seasons, you're not tuning out overnight. They're not cratering overnight, but they did set themselves on a course that begins that process. Well, similarly here, you just made a really good comp about the NBA. That no one here is suggesting there's a world where anyone in totality would ever stop watching college football. There is no world. But what happens if 35% of the audience gets shaved away? Mm-hmm. It would suck for you and I just on principle, but I also want you to think, you don't really care about how David and I feel. Think about it from the standpoint of what we're arguing over right now. Everyone's arguing over their slice of the revenue pie. Well, the problem there is, all the noise notwithstanding, one thing it assumes is that pie is fixed pie mentality, fixed pie theory. And that is, well, the pie is always going to be the pie. And so we don't have to really worry about whether it's going to be there. We just need to focus all our time, energy, and effort on how big our slice is going to be. Well, you could do that and then arrive at a conclusion and then look over and the pan's halfway as full as it used to be. And like, wait a second, that's not supposed to happen. The pie is just supposed to always be there. Or similarly, well, the audience is supposed to just always watch. None of this is supposed to matter to them. They're supposed to be sheep. They just show up every Saturday. Well, NASCAR thought that once upon a time. And then NASCAR found out, no, these are real humans with real interests and real decision making. And if you turn them off long enough, they could just walk away. And here's the thing, David, it's not a timeout. They walk away, then they don't come back.
Well, I'll make a comparison to the movie theater industry, right? Like, people still go to the theater from time to time. I don't go like I used to. I'll wait for it to be on pay-per-view. I'll wait for it to be on Netflix or whatever. Or if it's a movie I have to go see, part of that was because we didn't have to go during COVID, and we kind of found a new way to consume. But the apathy, right? I don't have to watch every game. I don't have to go to the college football stadium. I don't have to go watch the NBA. I like baseball, but I'll wait till after the All-Star game to be plugged in. You don't want that to happen, especially with like my kids' age that, we grew up watching every Saturday. These kids have other things that are competing for their time.
Yeah, and here's the other thing about any kind of younger member of a generation, 10-year-old right now. A 10-year-old right now will be a full decision-making adult in a decade or less. So by that time, if they're going to be a college football, like diehard P1 fan, they have to have had it ingrained in them what is great about the sport. A 10-year-old, a 5-year-old looks at it and says, the Sunday game, the NFL guys look like they're more talented than the Saturday guys. Why would I love the Saturday sport as much, if not more? Well, they have to be taught, and they have to be able to observe themselves what makes college football great. Now, you and I have been able to define that for a long time, but here's the problem. If those layers start being peeled away, you can't just lie to a kid, and even if you do, they look at it and see right through it, and they say, I don't know. I mean, the way you tell the story about the way it used to be, I don't necessarily see that. So it has to be there. Those elements have to be there. And then the other part of that, David, as much as that sounds kind of doom and gloomish, is I don't think any of this is irreversible. I don't at all. In fact, I think if you had proper decision-making ability and the right people in the room, I think you could course correct this in a year. Like you could do it really quick with a handful of decisions. And I don't know if that's a person. I don't know if that's a group of people. But I want you to think, if we handle this the right way, I want you to think about the cape that person or those people would end up wearing for the rest of eternity for being the face of what sort of saved college football from where it was headed. And who plays that role? I don't know, but it's there to be played.
Josh, do you think Nico's camp misread the opportunities out there, or do you think he thought Tennessee was going to cave, especially with the timeline?
Of course, they misread it. They misread it all the way back in December, and they continued to misread it. There are many, many different pitfalls to your dad representing you. That doesn't always mean that. I mean, look, Drew Rosenhaus could have a son. Well, Drew Rosenhaus would be fully capable of representing his son because he's a professional certified agent and can probably remove the emotion from the room. However, if you're dad first and representative second, then you've hamstrung yourself already because your emotion is involved. Not to mention your lack of experience totally in the space is involved. So I think they looked around, David, and they just assumed, well, I mean, he was a former highly rated quarterback, so he'll get paid. That's really probably the extent of their research. And I'm sure they reached out in a very, I don't know, like hypothetical manner during spring. And I'm sure they got real hypothetical feedback of, we'd take a look at him or yeah, man, it's all hypothetical. Like if I'm Pate State and Arch Manning's people reach out to me right now and say, hey, would there be a market for him? Yeah, of course there would be. Now, Nico's not Arch Manning per se, but you get my point. Mm-hmm. They probably didn't even think Nico was going to be on the market. Like the feedback you're getting is all theoretical.
I also, sorry?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I also think that part of the way they played it has also poisoned the waters as well. Like it's one thing for Nico to go in there because he's unhappy, but it's viewed as because he wants more NIL dollars. And that, I think, kind of poisons the potential landing spots.
Well, those were also the terms in which he originally signed with Tennessee. So it was kind of known all the while that he's going to the highest bidder. He's not alone. There are a lot of kids like that. Okay, well, then he gets to Tennessee and he or his camp act in accordance with how someone who was for sale would act. And now, not only that, because at least if I know you're going to the highest bidder, I know what I'm getting. But if you're going to the highest bidder and I also have to deal with baggage around you, and you're not proven, like it's not a real high-level proven commodity yet. I'm still having to roll the dice on the production part, and it's already post-spring. I mean, most places out there have their situation figured out at quarterback that can afford it. And so you really, really limited the potential pool of candidates, even in a perfect world. But it's not a perfect world. They know they're taking at the very least a risky asset, and at the very most, they're taking an asset that may not pan out the way it was originally valued. So I don't look, I'm looking around at where he could go. I don't even know how long that list is right now. And that point, you start asking yourself, could he just not play this year? Could he go sign with someone and just sit out for a year and then try and renegotiate his deal a year from now? I don't even know what all the options are at this point.
Yeah, I was thinking like Notre Dame, they could use a quarterback because they're not completely satisfied with their room, but they're not going to go that route. I don't think it makes sense, right?
So.
And this late in the game,
I don't think they will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's just not a lot of options. I want to talk to you about something. Not that I expect you to know everything about A&M's schedule, but Obi and I did a segment at the top of the show about the quarterbacks A&M's going to face this year, and the lack of experience from all the quarterbacks they're going to face. And I just find that as does not mean anything. Like Lenore Sellers was dynamic last year, especially against A&M. Arch has the potential to be fantastic, but we've got a limited sample size there. Jackson Arnold, we can you look through this list and you're like, the Notre Dame quarterback situation we just talked about. Angeli played a little bit, looked nice, but he may not even be the leader in the clubhouse at Notre Dame. You look at the quarterbacks they're facing, Josh, and you're like, there could be an opportunity for A&M because there isn't anybody who's got this deep history of starting, and especially in the SEC, outside of Lenore Sellers and Nussmeier, and that's just a season each.
Yeah, so I'm looking at it over here. It's from an opposing quarterback perspective, I'd call it a real high risk, high reward type of lineup. Because if you think about all these names I'm about to list, and you think about the best case panning out, Jackson Arnold could be what people expected of him out of high school. DJ Lagway could be what we saw towards the end of last year. Garrett Nussmeier could be the best guy in the league. I would say Sellers at the high end could challenge for that. And then Arch could be that as well. But all those guys have gigantic question marks on their forehead. Lagway because of injury as well as lack of overall proven production, and the others just that period. Then you start to ask from the A&M standpoint, okay, there's another variable there. Let's say all those guys do perform at no better than a B- to a B level. Well, then what kind of quarterback play is A&M getting? Because everyone can say the same thing about Marcel. So if you combine one of those and then you say Marcel gives you B+ level play, you could literally go 10-2 against that schedule. You could go 11-1 against that schedule. You could end up being, I wouldn't say a shocking team, but a mildly to moderately surprising team in the overall landscape of college football. I think about that. The two things I look at is your experience at quarterback, and then also how much staff turnover, not just head coach, but beneath head coach, have these staffs had. Like I remember I was at Missouri last year sitting down with Eli. He said, yeah, hey, if I give you a stat, you promise you won't just go like yelling it everywhere? I said, yeah. And he showed me a chart of how much newness there was on the staffs that they were facing. There was like a specific data point that they were looking at. He said, I've never seen one of our schedules look like this before. We have never faced more new than we're facing. That doesn't guarantee anything, but he just kind of smiled. He said, isn't that something to pay attention to, don't you think?
I agree with that completely. And as for Marcel, the ceiling was what we saw against LSU, right? Mm-hmm. And what we saw against Florida. He was fantastic. The floor wasn't that bad for Marcel, but it still needs to be significantly better. Like his middle needs to be higher than his middle was.
Well, I agree. So, and that's almost, if we played this hypothetical world where we could be guaranteed something, I'd love if you could just tell me that. If you could just tell me his floor is relatively, it's fair. It's not a huge basement. It's right here. This is not supposed to be a quarterback-centric team. That's not how Elko's building the roster. And so this is not a situation where I think like Cam Ward Miami last year. Marcel Reed's got to ball out and just hope that we can score 45 every week and give ourselves a shot to win. If that's the case, even if he does play at that level, the overall program's in big trouble. So I don't expect it to look like that. So, yeah, you give me solid B to B+ level play, and I've built the rest of the team around you like I should be in every game. I'm looking at their schedule. There's not a game that I should feel inferior in on this entire slate.